Thanks for joining us for another update on MarkTwainZephyr.com. Also, our Twitter and Facebook pages at Mark Twain Zephyr. I'm Robert Tabor, Director of Passenger Development with the Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad. And it's great to have you along for this update. It is Sunday, the 27th day of December 2020. And look, we got our little Mark Twain Zephyr Christmas tree that we put up for our crews who were busy working away on the train this week. And so yeah, celebrating Christmas out here with the Mark Twain Zephyr at the Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad. Now, most of our crews, of course, did have the week off for the holiday. So instead of doing one of our normal restoration updates, I thought we would do a little bit of special programming this week and next week. Now, the car behind me, as you notice, is named Effie Dean, and that's one of the questions we get asked a lot. Well, who is Effie Dean? And boy, the Effie Dean really doesn't fit in with the Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, Injun Joe, and Becky Thatcher and the other cars. Well, this car, as you may or may not know, is actually the spare car off the Pioneer Zephyr. This car really never operated with the Mark Twain Zephyr, but operated for most of its life on the Pioneer Zephyr, which is located at the Science and Industry Museum in Chicago, if you ever got the chance to visit it. Now, in 1960, when both the Pioneer and the Mark Twain Zephyr were both pulled out of service around that time period, the Pioneer Zephyr was donated to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and they only had a very limited display area, so they did not have room for the fourth car that was added on a few years later after the Pioneer Zephyr headed out. So this kind of floated around always with the Mark Twain Zephyr. All the various owners throughout the years kind of had this car. We always like to joke and say, yeah, let's buy 4 cars of the Mark Twain Zephyr and get one from the Pioneer Zephyr free. Anyway, Effie Dean, this car really had no name because the cars on the Pioneer Zephyr, unlike the Mark Twain Zephyr, never had names. So this car never had a name. However, the previous owners of the Mark Twain Zephyr and the spare car from the Pioneer Zephyr, Dan Krupski, John Lowe, and Ron Lorenzini, the previous owners who owned the train set from 1987 up until earlier this year. Well, in 1992, they contacted Albert Dean. He was the gentleman who actually designed the Zephyrs for the Bud Company. And they went to his home in Philadelphia, and they actually got a chance to sit down with Albert Dean and interview him a little bit about the Zephyrs. And Effie, that's his name of his wife. And she said, boy, she was such a sweetheart, they decided to name their spare car. So that's who Effie Dean is. We get a lot of emails up here asking who's Effie Dean and why is the car named Effie Dean. And kind of hopefully that answers the question. She is the wife of Albert Dean, who developed the Zephyrs. Thanks to the previous owners of the train, as we mentioned, especially Dan Krupski, he actually gave us a tape of when they sat down with Albert Dean in 1992, and they interviewed him. So we're going to play just a little bit of clip from the interview that they did. Now it is 1992 VHS tapes, so it's not going to be as crisp and clear as our normal programming, but enjoy the special holiday programming as the previous owners of the Mark Twain Zephyr, including Dan Krupski, John Lowe, and Ron Lorenzini, sat down with Albert Dean, the original designer of the Zephyr.
Oh, there was a black tree. Or a silver.
Yeah. No, excuse me, that's the cement that held it on. It was a smaller version of that there.
Oh, I see. That's unbelievable. What did they find out, or what did you find out when you put it in the wind tunnel?
Well, chiefly we were trying to predict the speed, maximum speed, from which performance curves could be computed. And
do you have another battery for this?
Oh, yeah.
And we found the aerodynamic drag was less than 1/3 that of conventional equipment. Aerodynamic drag is in proportion to the shape of the thing as well as its cross-sectional area. So the reduction in cross-sectional area was important. And of course, the shape was the most important part of the whole thing.
Did you design the actual shape of it, or was it a group of people?
Well, that was pretty much a joint effort.
Yeah.
Several of us. Our chief engineer at the time was Earl Ragsdale,
Yeah, yeah,
Colonel Ragsdale.
yeah.
And he was an unusual person who, he was an MIT graduate himself, and had considerable knowledge which he didn't force on anybody. But he took a bunch of young people and cheered them on, what he wanted to. So I'd say several of these things I'm sure I was responsible for, many he was. I suppose Paul Cray was responsible for some of it, things of that sort.
It's certainly amazing. It's amazing to see it.
I was an aeronautical engineer at MIT, and part of my interest there was in aerodynamics, obviously.
Were the other people, was their background aeronautical too, or mainly yours?
I think I was the only one at this particular time. We were working on the airplane.
Yeah.
2 years ahead of that, they were mostly aeronautical, but they all left to stay with the aircraft industry, and I stayed with this. And in my last year, I emphasized aerodynamics and structures in the aeronautical end particularly, and took several courses at once. And I was familiar with the wind tunnels. I'd done some wind tunnel testing. I knew the professor who was in charge of the wind tunnels, so I had most to do with designing the model for the wind tunnel and got the reports back on it.
So you sent it up to MIT?
Sent the model to MIT for them to do the wind tunnel test, yes.
And the figures that you came up with, how close were they to the actual figures?
They were very close.
Really?
We felt quite competent in the aerodynamics end of it, but the thing I wasn't sure was the track resistance, the wheels rolling and that sort of thing. But the electromotive people that we were working with the power plant were quite conversant with the rolling resistance, flange resistance, and the journal horsepower and things of that sort. So combining what they knew and what we had found out from the wind tunnel model, we came up with an accurate prediction. Actually, we predicted the top speed on the order of 96 miles an hour, 96, 98 along there. It actually ran 102 at one time, but I think they were pulling a few extra horses out of the engine when they did that. We should have been very close, and that was close when you consider that power varies as a cube of some of the drag resistances. So it was good. It was close.
Yeah, you were saying at one point that the belly pans turned out to be important in on the newer
Yeah,
ones here.
covering the equipment underfloor is very useful
Yeah,
in reducing the horsepower required. Matter of fact, we also found that the pantograph on the electric self-propelled equipment was surprisingly heavy on the train resistance. Matter of fact, with a car in the middle of a train, having a pantograph, exposed equipment underneath, that includes no shrouding around the trucks. 1/3 of the drag resistance, believe it or not, is in the pantograph. 1/3 is in the mess that's underfloor. And all the rest of the car body is only 1/3.
wow.
So we were working on a impressive part of it there to reduce the resistance.
Did you do make specially designed pantographs? They're a lot different.
No,
No?
we were particularly interested in I think it was a French one, Favorly pantograph, which was a single arm up with a single arm coming back, in contrast to this kind, which
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
the
yeah.
Illinois Central one.
which the U.S. cars were, I never got a comparable performance between them, but the single one was so much simpler.
Yeah. It's amazingly beautiful. It's, people who see it now are really astounded at how modern it is.
Well, it was a good sound technique.
Yeah, yeah.
It was well researched and came out well. Those who complain about the convolutions across here in the diaphragm, we didn't know how else to do it. Some of our later coupled cars had smooth rubber there with faceplates between it, which for most of the running gave a pretty smooth
Yeah.
transition from one to the other. But I think the maintenance is fairly high on those.
Well, you don't have an option. You can do anything. Because it's all gone.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I'd like to do this though, if we can find somebody
Well,
to.
I think depending on where you run, how sharp the curves are and so forth, you may still find this is the better solution because
Yeah.
it'll stretch further than the rubber would.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's gonna be the case, in fact. It's also prettier, I think.
Well, it gives a nice contrast to
Yeah.
the horizontal disposition without being too abrupt to change.
Yeah, we were wondering, well, obviously we have a million questions, probably some of which you can't answer, but we were talking last night about contacting Amtrak. Did you have much dealing with Amtrak over these, the new cars?
Had some, but I wouldn't say much. My contacts were all with Pennsylvania Railroad now. How many of those people are still with Amtrak in this respect, I have no idea.
So most of those cars were built for the Pennsylvania. You're talking about the electrified one?
Yeah,
Yeah. How about the later ones that they're now using? Were you involved with that, or was that after you had left?
well, I don't remember just where they fit in.
Um, I think they started building them about 1971 or so.
That's just about when I retired,
Uh-huh.
1970. But, yes, I was in all of those, but I would remember as working with Pennsylvania rather than Amtrak.
Yeah, that's right about when Amtrak came there. So I can believe that. One of the problems that we're facing right now is that I believe, I have great faith in this train. And I believe that Amtrak is going to want to run it eventually, somewhere down the line. For a lot of reasons. I think there's a lot of good publicity in it. And one of the questions that we had before, at least that I have, and I think that Bob has too, is how can we work with, or who would we work with in order to get it Amtrak compatible to where they wouldn't have any objection to running it?
Compatible at the outset.
Yeah, without, right. In other words, how can we do it right the first time without having to go back? Or do you have any thoughts on the subject?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, if you conform to AAR and regular federal requirements, which, to the best of my knowledge, it still does, they can't have any objections to operating it, except for interference with production schedules and things of that sort. But there were more recent specifications, the federal FRA requirements, which are very little different from the earlier AAR requirements. They apply only to cars that are coupled together. They don't seem to apply here. I'm thinking of their specifications on anti-telescoping posts. There was a change brought in there that they should withstand a certain force 18 inches above floor line. And that was a new specification for us. Our latest cars did meet that, but these earlier ones did not. However, they did not rule out previous cars which were built to other specifications. So I don't think you have any problems there.
Yeah, they're still running the heritage coaches.
Yeah, your tight lock couplers, these being emergency couplers, I don't think they have any requirement for them.
Yeah. Well, even that, you know, if there was a requirement there, I'm sure that could be changed without too much difficulty.
The tight lock coupler has a coupler carrier strength requirement to keep the coupler from being torn off with a down load.
Yeah.
And it'd take a fairly heavy reinforcement at the end to attach that coupler to it. But that wouldn't affect the car body, it's just the local conditions
underneath,
on the draft stones.
Yeah.
The brake systems and the things of that sort, I don't know about that. There are probably some changes in there.
Yeah, you know, I think we left with you a proposal that Wabco had come up with. And I think I would like to do that mainly because there would be no doubt about that if you were to tell someone that that's what happened. The amazing thing that has been, as far as I'm concerned, that all these companies still have all the original blueprints, which is, to me, phenomenal. We've been dealing with Bombardier, and they bought out all the Bud archives.
Well, they bought them all.
Yeah. And,
But they've been very forthcoming.
yeah, well, it costs money, but the reason it costs money is because all the original blueprints were on linen.
Yeah,
And so it's a process where they have to transfer it from linen to a negative, and then they make a print from the negative or something. It's very, little complicated. So they do charge a little money, but they've been really cooperative.
good.
And Timken has the same story.
I never got acquainted with the Bombardier people, but I know we were working with them.
Yeah. I think, as I mentioned to you, the Timken people have been particularly good about it. We had talked in letters about the bearings,
Yeah.
and apparently most of the bearings are still available, but they no longer make the cages. So the cages would be a real problem, but what they recommended was going with the AP bearings that that are current. And that way there would be no question about it. What they do is rebore the boxes apparently to fit these bearings in. And so that might be the solution, because I don't know where you'd get the cages made for the bearing. I suppose it could be done, because I'm sure they're just like stampings or something. I don't think well, that might be cast.
That you mean the separators from the rulers?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think they're bronze castings, which is
Oh.
machined.
yeah. I suppose you could have that done, but I think all in all, it might be,
We'd be better off to
Better off
have
to-
something that's available.
yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed just that little taste of the interview that the previous owners of the Mark Twain Zephyr did with Albert Dean, and we'll save some of the other footage for maybe later on in the year, and we'll air the rest of it later on one of our Mark Twain Zephyr updates. So again, hope you're having a wonderful Christmas weekend out there and celebrating as best you can during a pandemic with your folks and family in the same household, and hope everybody's being safe out there. Again, Merry Christmas from all of us here at the Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad. We'll be back with you for another update January 3rd coming up, and we'll have some special programming for you then as well. Till then, Robert Tabor here at the Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad, and we'll see you soon.